What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. So today I'm bringing to you a card discussion on Back to the Front. One of the things I love about Back to the Front is that it probably has one of the most simplest effects of any card in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Considering some of the card effects in this game can get rather long and extraneous. So Back to the Front is a normal trap card that reads, target one monster in your graveyard, special summon it in defense position. So basically when you look at this card, you're looking at Monster Reborn, but in a normal trap card. And yeah, the monster has to go in defense position as well, so I guess it's not as broken as Monster Reborn, but considering that here in the TCG, we have Monster Reborn banned, this is a pretty close, embodiment of getting Monster Reborn back. And not to mention, this card is at 3, so that's something you do want to keep in mind as well. Now, immediately when a lot of people are looking at Back to the Front, they immediately want to compare it to two other cards, Call of the Haunted, as well as Oasis of Dragon Souls. And well, that's a very easy comparison to make. I don't really feel like one of these cards is necessarily better than the other for any particular reason. You look at Call of the Haunted, Call of the Haunted's biggest strength is that it places the monster in attack position. So this means that, you can do tricks in the battle phase, you can still attack with the monster. Most monsters, especially in the competitive meta, have much higher attack values than defense values, so there's a much higher likelihood that if you resurrect that monster with Call of the Haunted, it's probably going to survive if it goes into attack mode as opposed to defense. And then you have a card like Oasis of Dragon Souls as well. Now, Oasis of Dragon Souls is something you could probably almost one-to-one compare this card to because they both resurrect the monster, they both put it in defense mode. The only difference here is that Oasis is a continuous trap card, and it also changes the attribute of the monster to worm type. Well, I'm sorry, the type of the monster to worm type. Now, some people, that can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on how some people look at it. A lot of people consider it a bad thing because of some specific type synergies that might require your deck to function, like if you're playing dinosaurs, for instance, and you need like a specific dinosaur monster to overlay to make Logia or something like that, then the drawback of Oasis of Dragon Souls there can actually hinder you from doing some specific plays. But in some cases, the type changing on Oasis can be really powerful. In this instance, let's look at a deck like ABC. A lot of people like using Oasis of Dragon Souls on a monster like ABC Dragon Buster because by changing the type of Dragon Buster to a worm type, it becomes immune to one of the most devastating cards against the deck, being System Down. Since it's no longer Machine and now it's a worm, that card that pretty much every person on the planet sides for ABC now becomes absolutely useless. But going back to the Front, so the biggest thing that Back to the Front has going for it is that it's a normal trap card, which means not only can the monster that you're attempting to resurrect dodge removal, but it also means that this card is chainable as well, and it's going to go off. So for instance, if you were to activate something like Call of the Haunted or Oasis of Dragon Souls, targeting a monster in your graveyard, if your opponent has a ZOODIAC Dryden on the board, if they have something like Masterpiece, if they have an MST, if they have a Cosmic Cyclone, Twin Twister, any form of spot removal whatsoever, that monster's not going to get resurrected. But in this case, you're actually able to resurrect it because even if they chain any of those effects, Back to the Front, since it's not a continuous effect and there's no contingency on the card that requires the monster to stay or not stay on the board, it's going to get resurrected and it's going to pretty much be where you want it to be, and that's absolutely amazing. I love that this card exists because it just provides so much support to so many different decks in a variety of different ways. Take, for example, ZOODIAC. Now, I know ZOODIAC is probably on the chopping block a little bit later in September, but there are some cool applications here because a lot of people talk about a card like Shuffle Reborn as an extender for the deck. Back to the Front can also act as an additional extender as well because as long as you have one ZOODIAC monster on the field, you're free to go off and do the entire chain of ZOODIAC summons. And this card also triggers Thoroughblade as well if it's resurrected from the graveyard, since Thoroughblade triggers when it's special summoned. I find that another really cool thing about Back to the Front, it doesn't even negate effects. You literally get to special summon a monster from the graveyard for free in defense position. That's absolutely fucking incredible. Now let's look at another deck like Dinosaurs, because if you've been paying any attention to the OCG, a lot of OCG Dinosaur players are actually playing several copies of this card, and there's a few reasons for that. First off, this triggers Overraptor if it's special summoned back from the graveyard, which means you're either going to get an additional search or possibly send something to the graveyard to fuel for some potential combos you're going to be doing later on in that turn. You can also resurrect something like Ultimate Conductor Tyranno if it was properly special summoned first, which is insane because it's a 3500 body with one of the craziest effects ever printed. But you can also resurrect something like Danglong first of the Yang Zing, because Danglong also triggers when it's special summoned as well. So being able to get another search off of Danglong is really cool and allows you to just fuel the pseudo Danglong turbo that is that mini engine in the dinosaur archetype. Then you also have the fact that this card combos very well with the artifacts. If the artifacts are special summoned on your opponent's turn, they're either going to pop something via Moral Attack or lock your opponent out of special summoning via Scythe. Could you imagine if we had this card back in hat format? That would have been absolutely fucking crazy, because there was so much disruption, because a lot of people would try to out-tempo their opponent by stopping their Call of the Haunted plays. But if this card existed back then, they wouldn't even be able to do that, and Hat would be even more of a powerhouse of a deck than it was before. Your hands would make it to the field, Traptrix Myrmilia would always make it to the field and be able to pop another card, or Dionea would special something. It would just be absolutely crazy. Then you have some other minor synergies as well. Cosmo can get out its ships and make sure that they're not destroyed, because a lot of the time people would just, maybe MST the Call of the Haunted and then the ship would be destroyed. Sure, it would bounce into something lower, but being able to ensure that your Dark Destroyer hits the field, in my opinion, is really fucking crucial if you just want to pop a card on the field for free, because if they destroy it, you're still going to get something, but the fact that Dark Destroyer hit the field means you're going to ensure that it does pop a card on the field. Then you have stuff like Shadow Mist and Heroes. A lot of hero players have played Call of the Haunted for years now to just abuse that effect of Shadow Mist to search Mask Change. This is arguably a better card to do that, because you're going to ensure the Shadow Mist effect goes off. You're going to lose a little bit of your aggro capabilities because you're not going to be having Call of the Haunted to special summon monsters in attack mode, but ensuring that your Shadow Mist gets its search is almost leagues ahead of being able to get a little bit of extra damage in those games where you're probably winning anyway, and that outcome ultimately doesn't matter. I also like that if you're playing this card, if you have any just boss monster in your deck that you successfully special summon from like your extra deck or something, kind of like what I was saying with Ultimate Conductor Tyrann or even like Danglong, you can resurrect it back to the board. Stuff like BLS, Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, just any just massive fucking just game ender that your opponent dealt with once, they have to deal with it again, and you basically got that card onto the field for free, especially if it has an incredibly devastating effect, maybe even a quick effect that your opponent has to deal during your opponent's turn. Now, no card comes without its downsides, and this card definitely has a few of them. First of all, it is in fact a trap card, so you do have to keep in mind that the turn that you get this card, you do have to set it, and then at the very least, you need to have something in your graveyard that's worth special summoning, so there's the potential it could be dead if you don't have the right cards at the right time. But then also, too, I find it hilariously ironic that they released this card in the debut set of Link Monsters, and Link Monsters can't be played in defense position, meaning that Back to the Front cannot resurrect a Link Monster and makes it completely worthless. I don't know why, I just thought that was really hilarious, but it's kind of ironic just ultimately that this is the set that this card decided to drop in. And really, this card isn't for every deck. Like, sure, in theory, it could work in every deck, or any deck that just has monsters that gain benefits when they're special summoned, and it's not specific as to where from, i.e. Thoroughblade, Overraptor, cards like that. But just because it works in those decks doesn't necessarily mean it's ideal for those decks. And really, it's going to come down to players testing and finding the right spot for Back to the Front to be fully optimized and maximized in the meta. But guys, those are just my thoughts on Back to the Front. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about this card and what other potential cool combos that this card could help enable. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts because I love when we have a generic good card like this because there's so many possibilities and it's really endless what a card like this can do. And when future support comes out, you never know when a card like this might become absurdly broken. So guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. And if you found this video informative, consider backing me on Patreon because just by pledging only $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.